We are live. Welcome to Winning. Let me turn my camera a little bit here. Kind of like out of the shot there. Welcome to Winning in Business Live. I'm Carolyn Cole, your show host. My guest today is the amazing Derek Lewis. Derek, I'm so excited you're here on the show today. Thank you for saying yes and popping on.
It's my pleasure, Carolyn.
All right, let me tell you a little bit about me, and then I'm going to tell you about the great guest that is here with us today. If you're interested in writing that business book, you want to hear from Derek because Derek believes everyone has the ability to write a book, and everyone should, whether you get help or not. Am I saying that right, Derek?
That's right. Everybody should write a book.
Everyone should. All right. I am Carolyn Cole, your show host. I'll say that once again. I'm a global executive and business consultant and coach. I work with C-suite executives, business owners, entrepreneurs, and professionals. For nearly 2 decades, I was a Fortune 100 and Fortune 200 senior company trial attorney. Now I make the case on behalf of your business and career dreams, your happiness too. I'm founder of BoomTank.com. That is my company. Please join the email list over at boomtank.com. I've got a really great audio download for you around success and around the top 10 life and business lessons from my show guests. I also have some other things that I know you're going to want to check out, my courses and whatnot. See that, and thank you for visiting that. I'm also show host of the global BoomTank Business Show podcast. That is available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Overcast, the new Google listening app, and a bunch of other places. So please check out the podcast, if you will, and support the show. If you subscribe and leave a review, I'll be sure to give you a shout out in a future episode. And I really appreciate you doing that. BoomTank is where business success and happiness meets. This is the Winning in Business live show. It's one of 2 live shows that I had for the summer. Now I'm launching a 3rd coming this Thursday. You'll hear more about that. And the guests that I have are leaders in their industry, and they bring such amazing value, and Derek is no exception. Would you say you're exceptional? I would say you're exceptional.
I will agree that I am exceptional.
Okay, I love that. Please share this live stream with anyone you think would love it, would like it. Also, would you please like the business page where this is being broadcast from? You know, we're taking a hit for the team and not broadcasting it on the personal page where more people would come, because if you're going to build a solid business of consisting of an audience over 5,000 people, you have to build it on your business page. Short-term pain, long-term gain. Do it. Please, please like this page, boomtank.com over at Facebook, or it's theboomtank.com over at Facebook. Derek, do you have a business page that you would like people to like for you on Facebook?
Yeah, Derek Lewis Books.
Okay. And Derek is just here as it's spelled in the caption here, Derek Lewis with an I, Lewis Books. And that's at Facebook, right?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Here we go. I'm going to jump into this. Now I want to talk about you. Wonderful you. Are you ready for me to talk about you?
Well, I'm an only child, Carolyn, so I love being in the spotlight, the center of attention. Yes, please.
All right. So we're calling this again, Write That Top Business Book. Thought leaders in business, whether entrepreneurship, business growth and scaling, leadership, technology, economics, etc., and you cover other fields, they all invest in, I shouldn't say they all. Let me strike that. I'm going to go this from the top because it's not all, but it's those smart ones that come to you. Thought leaders in business, whether in entrepreneurship, business growth and scaling, leadership, technology, economics, etc., invest in professional ghostwriters to write their books and connect with major literary agents. These thought leaders use their books to cement their unique, expert, and professional voice. Some use their books to create movements for social betterment beyond their professional recognition. And I learned that piece actually from you yesterday in our pre-chat, Derek, where you said, yes, it's about business expertise, but it's also, for a lot of them, creating a movement around the book and being a figurehead in that way, being more multidimensional. So that was a fascinating insight. Derek has created a highly successful business ghostwriting such books. He also teaches others how to do the same. Derek has worked with business leaders on 5 continents who either have their own highly successful company or work at the C-suite level with companies and organizations such as Microsoft, Disney Pictures, PIXAR, COCA-COLA, DAIMLER-CHRYSLER, Walmart, International Monetary Fund, Red Cross, McKinsey & Company, SAP, and others. Derek is author of The Business Book Bible, the industry guide to writing business books. And you can find that over on Amazon.com. We'll talk about his life, his fascinating ghostwriting business, business book writing tips, how ghostwriters work, and what they charge. Very important. And of course, success and happiness too. So we're going to cover all those things today, and it's going to be another great show. Welcome to the show, Derek. So excited to have you here today.
Again, it's my pleasure, Carolyn. Thank you for the opportunity.
Let's start with this whole concept of not only ghostwriting, but business book ghostwriting. You make a very good living doing this. How did you decide on this as your career?
Oh, I wish that it had been a decision. It was more falling into it. I've yet to meet a successful ghostwriter who just got up one day and said, I think I want to help other people write books. All of us fell into it by accident. Plenty of ghostwriters used to be journalists, and while they were interviewing somebody, that person then asked, "Would you like to also do my book?" My route is actually from a business background, so I loved reading. I love reading business books, and so that led me to go into business consulting. So I was an in-house consultant. And while I was there, they found out that I liked to write, that I was a good writer. And so I became the de facto marketing guy, if you will. And so a coworker and I, we started our own IT company. And while trying to put groceries on the table, I did moonlighting as a business copywriter. And while doing that, I came across a post online of somebody asking, to help with writing a business book. And I thought, well, I've been doing all this business copywriting. I've read, a million business books. That sounds fun. And I loved it. I fell in love. And so it was, within just a space of a few weeks, I fired myself from the company that my friend and I had started because I found out that I'm not an IT guy. I'm awful at it. And he's since gone on to grow the company to be quite successful. So me firing myself was one of the best things for that business. And I stopped taking on any new copywriting jobs. I just went full-fledged business book ghostwriting. And that decision has been, 8 years ago? And so it's been nothing but business books ever since.
You asked me to look at your LinkedIn profile, which I've done, and I'm going to share the part of the backdrop that you put on LinkedIn, which is basically what you just said now. I love reading great business books, but I love helping authors create them more. When I was in high school, a Brazilian missionary lent me his tattered copy of Quest for the Best of Neiman Marcus fame. Love at first read. As my friends gamed or read Stephen King, I devoured books on economics, entrepreneurs, titans of business, and more. Those influenced me to pursue a degree in economics, then a master's in economic development, where I wrote a thesis on microfinance from my fieldwork with Dominican loan sharks. Fascinating. Dominican loan sharks. How'd you get tied up with them?
Serendipity, luck, and being open-minded.
All right.
A professor of mine had done a lot of microfinance work in the Dominican Republic. And so I had a lot of his field work as, for context and for a basis. Then whenever I got down there, I was talking to one of the micro entrepreneurs. And they were talking about, their loan shark. And I said, well, why are you using a loan shark, a prestamista, instead of going to one of the, the microfinance, nonprofits, or even one of the banks that are providing microfinance? And so I said, can I meet him? And her loan shark happened to be a woman. I said, so my mind is just being blown. So whenever there's something like that, you have to figure out what's going on. And so just by, following this thread, I kept tugging on this thread and fell off into this whole other world of micro financiers.
When we talk about the writing, and you said you took jobs moonlighting, and we talked in the pre-chat, it sounded very Stephen King-like, that Stephen King did the same thing when he was trying to make a career in writing, and you had a great story about Carrie. Would you share that with the members of the audience, please? I love this story.
So Stephen King, before he became Stephen King, he was a teacher. And so he was teaching in Maine, and he and Tabitha, they were as poor as church mice. And so he would teach during the day. And then in the evenings, he would come home, and he had this old, I think an Underwood typewriter. And he would go in the laundry room of their little trailer house. And there was this little school desk. Maybe he had gotten it from the school he was teaching at. And so Tabitha would come in and put on, laundry, the washing and the drying. And then while the washer and the dryer was going, he would sit in the little student desk right there and typed out, that's how he typed out Carrie, actually, one of his first, major breakout successes.
And you said that was in the back room of a trailer at a basic
the laundry room of an old mobile home that they, that was their first, I think it was their first home. Yeah.
Before we move into the nuts and bolts of what it is you do, what does that story mean to you? What does that story lend to your life and to your quest in writing?
So one of the things about Stephen King and his book on writing, that's the title, On Writing. It's one of the best books that any aspiring or would-be writer should read, because he's so honest and transparent, not only about his early life, but about his motivations, what drives him. And one of the things that I appreciate about Stephen King is he doesn't put on any airs. He's not, whenever you think about a writer like Stephen King, you don't usually think of somebody who truly doesn't, how do I say? I don't want to say that he doesn't care about the money, but for Stephen King, he wrote not because he wanted to become Stephen King, but because he had stories in him that he had to get out. And it just so happens that they feel a great market need. And so he's able to make a great living. But that's not why he wrote. He didn't write so he could become a famous big-time writer. He wrote because he had something in him that he had to get out. And so he's almost the poster child for, that follow your passion or follow the fire that's within you, and all of your dreams will come true. Life is usually a little more complicated than that. But in Stephen King's case, that's almost the formula for success. He did something that he loved because he had to do it, and then success followed.
Very good. And for those that will be listening to this episode later on the podcast, you are surrounded in your office by books. And I mean lots and lots and lots of books. And we talked pre-chat that when you were smaller, you knew you were a writer. You always loved writing. You always loved books. You always had that sense. And how does that feel now with the business book work you're doing following that? You seem completely aligned with what you truly were meant to do. You feel that?
I do. And, sometimes people ask you, and if you could go back and tell your younger self one thing, what would it be? I always wanted to be a writer, but I knew that most writers didn't make much money at all. And so I kind of relegated that idea of being a writer to, maybe whenever I retired, maybe like John Grisham, right? He was a successful attorney, and then switched to being a writer. So I thought that writing was something that I would do after my primary career, and never occurred to me that I could make a great living combining my love of business books and writing. Had no idea. Just wish I would have discovered that sooner. Be a little bit further down the road.
Terrific story. Let's move into the work. Hey, Pascal, thank you for joining. Really appreciate it. Welcome to the show. When you do your work and you start with a client, tell us how that works. They find you, you find them, they find you, and we talked about that you have different ways that they find you, referrals as well. They come to you. What are the next steps? Where do you begin with them?
So it depends on where they are. So I market myself as a business ghostwriter, and that's where the vast majority of my business revenue comes from. But I also provide editing, author consulting, and author coaching, as well as ghostwriter training. So for most authors, we have to figure out where they are. For some people, they're on at the kind of the very beginning of their journey, and they're trying to figure out what their book should be about. Other people, maybe their book idea has been as the culmination of them, teaching or consulting and training for 5 or 10 years or longer. And now they're trying to take all of these ideas and figure out how to put them into a book that people actually want to read.
And we talk, your clients are business people, they're global consultants, these people, and you said something very interesting. They're not only trying to share their unique professional voice. A fair amount of them have already done that part. They are now seeking your help because they want to create a book around their brand, around who they are, but for social betterment. They have a social cause that is important to them. Can you share a little bit about your clients and the people that you're seeing these days that you're writing these business books for?
Yeah, so probably the best example of that is I was the developmental editor for Dr. Patty Fletcher. Her book is Disruptors, Success Strategies from Women Who Break the Mold. So Dr. Patty is passionate about gender equity in the workplace. And her book, it's about so much more than her just wanting to have a business card for her consultancy. She wants to move the needle, that the gender equity that's possible. We haven't achieved yet, and gender equity, the gender disparity, we've closed the gap in the past few decades by leaps and bounds. But over the past 10 years, the rate at which we've closed the gap has slowed. So we're still making progress, but we're not making progress as quickly as we used to. And that she won't stand for that. That we've made too many strides to slow down now. And so her book is about far more than just her. It's about encouraging women throughout the world to find success on their own terms. And so the book represents 15 years between her getting her doctorate in her dissertation was on women in business and the different types of leadership between male and female. And so the challenge was, how do we take 15 years, dissertation, all her years at SAP, working in a number of different places, her consultancy, the coaching that she's done with executive women, and turn that into a great book that is going to inspire other women. How do we make a book that's going to be bigger than her? And so that's whenever you talk about where do we start, it always starts with, there's all of this stuff, there's all of their experiences and insights and expertise. And how do we sift and sort and wade through all of that to structure it in such a way that it's going to create a book that can be bigger than the author themselves.
And we're going to talk in a second about how you unpack that. But for the listeners and those viewing, and if you're catching on the replay, thank you very much for watching the replay. If you join us live, thank you for joining us live. The SAP, it's not SAP, it's SAP. SAP is really a technical company, and it deals with a lot of finance. When I worked with IBM for New York Minute, we did SAP and other implementations, and it was really the software backbone for economies to run their numbers and for Department of Defense to manage their salaries. It was basically a numbers-driven, finance-driven software platform to run governments and currencies and departments of defense and those kinds of things. It's a very big enterprise, very technical. And she had that expertise, but she stepped out to the social betterment. That was what she was using her book for, rather than cement herself as a technical voice, period. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. Yeah.
Okay. Now, how would any business person that comes to you, whether they want to use their book as a business card, right? And we know that in this day and age, selling books is really not the prime motivation, because book sales are not the motivation for writing the book. This is, as we talked in the pre-chat, this is an investment in your career. This is a marketing tool, whether you're marketing your professional voice or whether you're marketing your professional social cause, whatever it is that you're doing. Someone comes to you and they say, okay, I either want this book to establish me as a thought leader in business or in the social reform movement, whatever it is. How do you unpack? Let's take Dr. Patty, those 15 years. What are the actual steps you take to unpacking all of that? What does a ghostwriter do with it?
Well, so that's two different questions. What do most ghostwriters do, and what do I do?
Let's talk about you. I don't really care about those. I mean, I'm sure they're fine people. Let's talk about your process, what you do, because you have expertise on 5 continents with all of these global people and very powerful people. What do you do?
So I call it my Frankendraft process. And the reason for that is that like the Frankenstein monster, whenever you first assemble your manuscript, it is not pretty. It is this ugly monster of a thing with, the bolts sticking out of his neck, and stitches, and this arm isn't as long as the other arm. I mean, it's just ugly, but that's okay, because it has to be. We have to just bring it to life first, and then after we bring it to life, then we can start making it look pretty. Because most people, and especially I find this is true with professionals, that whenever they start writing the book, they want to write it perfectly from the very beginning, and so they put something down and then they erase it because it doesn't look right. It's not great. They start writing chapter 1. In the beginning, and they want to write, perfect and beautiful all the way through to the end. And that's just not how you create something, especially not something as complex and as multifaceted as a book. And so I have a 5-step process that begins with not worrying about writing the book at all. It's really, step 1 is about assembling all the parts and pieces. So with Dr. Patty, the kickoff is I do a 3-day kind of intensive retreat where we go through everything. We go through, the last 15 years of her professional experience, where she really started to focus on gender equity, and some of her, experience even before that was relevant. Why did she pick gender equity for her doctorate? What was her what's been her experience? How has she coached, other people? Why does she think that this is important? So just unpacking all of these ideas, playing devil's advocate, poking thoughts, provoking thoughts, challenging her, arguing respectfully. But, I say arguing, devil's advocate for why that might not, be the case, and challenging her to be more explicit or more elementary about her explanation. So we unpack all of that. And so once we have all of that, then we have all of these building blocks of things that might become the book. We don't assume that we know exactly what the book is going to be, because at some point the book is going to take on a life of its own. It's kind of the Frankenstein element of it. but we've at least got to figure out what is on the map and what isn't. So then we sift and sort through all of this, and I try to find a natural structure, a natural narrative for that. As opposed to most people, they want to have a very defined outline, a very perfect structure, and then fill in the blanks. And I don't find that that's effective. So I try to find what are the natural ways that topics are organizing themselves. What material has Dr. Patty given that seems to be important, and what is perhaps tangential. And then in step 3, we actually start putting those together. We have a vague outline of, we think this is how the book is going to come together. Okay, well, what if we put this first and then brought this after? And then, okay, if we're going to put these two pieces, then this really, there's a piece of content missing here. Do we need to go find some data to back up this claim? Or is there something that's more recent that sheds some light on that? So after we've and this is for really whether I'm being the developmental editor or the ghostwriter or the coach, the manuscript coach. Once you string all of this together, then you've got this Frankenstein of a monster. But you have to have that in order to do step 4, which is editing, where you go back through and you find who your target reader is. You find out what their problems are. You make sure that the book is actually answering a market need. So the way I like to say it is, you have to write from the inside out, but then you have to edit from the outside in. And so we go through rounds and rounds and rounds of editing. There's one author I'm working with. We're on his 13th revision, because that's what the manuscript needs. We're about to do past number 13, because that's just what this particular project entailed.
Are these the 3 days that you meet with the people? Is that a virtual meeting? Is that an in-person meeting?
In-person.
Great. I want to let the audience know I'm holding up a book now, The Introvert's Edge by Matthew Pollard. Matthew was a guest on my show months ago. You see all the tabs for those listening, and you can't see it. It's tabbed in red and blue, and it's got yellow highlights. I make a mess of a book, don't I? Isn't that a messy book? It's a fun book, but isn't it messy? Don't you think, Derek?
That's what great books are supposed to be. They're supposed to engage.
I love this book. Yeah, I love the book, and I actually bought it to read it to prepare for the interview with Matthew. I absolutely just can't say enough great things about it. It's called The Introvert's Edge, Matthew Pollard, Pollard. And the reason I'm bringing it up is you ghost wrote this book with Matthew. And that's how I discovered you to begin with. And I thought, this book is amazing. I did not know before this book there were professional business ghostwriters. You were my introduction to that. I found that fascinating. And I was always wanting to have you on one of my shows, because I just thought you did such a great job with this. And I wanted to know how you learned to do this and what this was about. So once again for coming on the show. Let me ask you, with the organizing the Frankenstein draft once you have it, and that's very powerful, because I like how you say write from within and then you edit from without. Do you, when you're organizing, I know a New York Times bestselling author, and what she does is she writes down all ideas for maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 months, puts them in a big box, then dumps the box out on the floor, has a wall, and just puts them all up on the wall and just stands there for days, just rearranging the cards until they fit into some cognizant form, and she develops chapters that way and structure and flow. What do you use personally to organize this? Do you use the index card method? Do you use software? What do? You use your mind? What are you using over there? And welcome to the show, Lori. Welcome. Thank you for joining the show. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Oh, you use an in-bin? You're holding up an in-bin for my people who can't see. That's so funny. It's stacked with things. That's how you organize it, the in-bin?
I have a huge, surface, and everything is printed out, and I literally put it in different piles and in stacks. So what she does, but horizontally instead of vertically.
Okay, well, that makes sense then. So we talked in the pre-chat about people still love the feel of books. They love just having a book in their hands, and that hasn't changed in the digital age. There's something wonderful about that feeling. And the same with paper on the desk and organizing it, or index cards on a wall. There's something tactile about putting this book together that we haven't left behind yet. Do you agree with that?
Yes. And I wish I could find this story. I think it was HP. They were working with a group of school-age kids, maybe second or third grade, and they had the kids, and they were doing, you remember the old paint program, right, where you could draw, stuff and whatever. So they would, the kids would do all of this, and then the kids would print it out. And the researchers asked, so why do you want to print this out? Isn't it on the screen right there? Why do you have to why print it? And they said, well, because it's not real on there. Like, as long as it's digital, it's not real. It's an idea. But whenever you print it out, all of a sudden it's real. And that's why, one of the reasons why, if you're going to write a book as an authority builder, as a credibility booster, you should always have a version that is that's hard copy, because a Kindle book, an ebook, is never going to be as impressive as actually holding this book in your hands and quickly flipping through, seeing all the words on there. As long as it's intangible, it's not real. But as soon as it's tangible, it has literal weight and mass. It exists in the world.
I still view this, and you agree with me, that it's a calling card. It's a bigger calling card. It's a heavier calling card. It's a calling card with lots of pages, but it is your calling card. It is a business card. How did you go about building a client base with business writers who hired you from Microsoft, Disney Pictures, PIXAR, COCA-COLA, DAIMLER-CHRYSLER, Walmart, International Monetary Fund, and so on and so on? How did you go about building that impressive client base?
All of my authors have found me via Google. So I tried for years, Carolyn, to create some kind of effective marketing strategy or tactics where I could find those kinds of authors, and I was never successful. But even while I was doing that, there are plenty of people finding me via Google. And so once I finally put two and two together, that here I'm putting all of my time and effort into something that has never returned me one client. I'm putting no time and effort into the one thing that has brought me all of the clients. So I stopped doing outbound. I started focusing strictly on inbound, and that has seemed to be the ticket. Whenever you're going to create a business book, especially if you've tried and you realize how hard it is to get all of these ideas out of your head and onto paper and in a format that's cohesive and coherent, that people actually want to read, you realize that it's incredibly difficult to do that for yourself. And so the people who want to work with me, they are going to invest a lot of their time finding somebody like me, somebody that they can trust personally and professionally, to help them capture their voice and their vision and turn it into a great book. So they had one. Go ahead.
No, please. I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
I had one. He after we began working together, he shared with me that he had a spreadsheet of 100 potential ghostwriters. So from that sheet of 100, he pared it down to about a short list of 10, maybe to pursue, and then there were 3 at the end that he was seriously considering, and then he began working with me. So I was literally 1 out of 100 that he had began with.
I can see why. And Pascal and Lori both agree that having something in your hand is very important to them. They agree totally with that. That's how they are as well. You teach. You have writing programs. Tell us about the programs that you put together. What are you doing now, program wise?
So I had I guess a colleague of mine that's turned into a friend, Ed Gandia, B2B launcher. Great guy. And he had interviewed me for his podcast, had such a huge response that he approached me and said, Derek, a lot of my followers, they'd like to know more about ghostwriting. What would you think about putting together a course and us offering it to my students? And I said, well, I mean, I've never done anything like that before, but, and like you said, for New York Minute, actually, I was a teacher, and I've done some professional training and workshops before. So yeah, let's give it a try. And so we had such a great experience in the first round that we did 5 rounds. We've done 5 different ghostwriter training courses. And it's been amazing. These people who have way more experience than I do, but needed some help on the business side of it. And so me, helping them turn their expertise, turning, their years of working with writing for themselves or writing for others, and then help them make the leap into ghostwriting, and to see them land, $30,000, $50,000 gigs whenever, they were scrapping for peanuts before that. It's been amazing. So, in fact, just about 6 weeks ago, he and I decided that it was time for what I was doing to kind of grow into its own thing. So I've just launched Ghostpreneur Academy. This is where I'm going to be offering my courses and other trainings to help usually freelance writers make the leap into ghostwriting. So I'm right on the cusp. It's exciting.
All right. Why don't we, since we're right here, and then we're going to move into the cost for ghostwriting, because people, if they want to hire you, they want to know what they have to pay to get that business book out the door with your help. What website should they go to learn about this new academy if they're interested in business ghostwriting as a career?
So everything's on the mothership, DerekLewis.com.
All right. And we'll have links for that in the show notes over at boomtank.com. And if you're seeing this posted somewhere, chances are, with the exception of YouTube, I'll always put a link to something for you. So that's very good. Very good. When we talk about money and the salary they can make, let's talk about you and the framework for assessing what the fee will be for the client. How do you go about determining that, and what kind of fees do you charge?
Yeah, that's the numbers 1 and 2 questions that ghostwriter always have is: 1, how do I find clients? And 2, how much should I charge? And so the answer to number 1 is what I was talking about earlier. I completely switched from me trying to find clients. You have to flip the question around. The question you should really ask, especially in this day and age in just about any industry and profession, is: how do I help clients find me? And it's a total mind flip.
I love that.
Thank you. Trial and error. I wish I had come up with that a lot sooner. I could have saved myself a few years of headaches and heartaches. But the other question: how much should I charge? So Carolyn, helping somebody create a book, and especially if you're going to be ghostwriting their book from scratch, it's a full-time profession, and it's going to take months and months of working and trial and error and refining and editing and passes and rounds of dialogue, conversations. And so
let me stop you if I may, to put that in perspective. We're talking at least a year or 2 years, somewhere in that window, so that everybody understands what that means. That's when we talk pre-chat. I know you had somebody outside of 2 years, but by and large, between 1 and 2 years to write the book, essentially. Is that right?
So in my training, I always tell my ghostwriters, especially if they're unsure, that they should always quote 12 months. Because if you can't ghostwrite a book in 12 months, then something was wrong from the outset.
So you actually feel it could be 1 year. It's not going towards 2. It's really 1 year. Is that
you're able to? A professional ghostwriter should be able to ghostwrite somebody else's book in 12 months. Yeah.
If we pull away from other people learning the craft and we come back to you, do you typically take 1 year to do your books?
So for the ghostwriting part, I've done it in as little as 3 months.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that's an adequate expectation, but I usually quote more like 9 or 10 months. But in this one particular instance, things transpired somewhat beyond my control and had to be done in 2.5.
Okay, 2.5 years, you mean? That was the one outside.
2.5 months.
2.5 months. Oh, yeah. My.
Yeah, it was brutal.
All right. Now,
do that again.
You have a framework that you share with your clients on what the industry charges. Would you mind sharing that with us here today, please?
Yeah. So if you are paying less than $25,000 for someone to ghostwrite your book, chances are that they're not a professional ghostwriter. They're probably a freelancer, an amateur who doesn't understand how much work it takes. Because once you ghostwrite a book, there's no way that you charge $10,000 or $15,000. Not if you've done a proper job creating a commercially viable manuscript. Nobody would do it for 10 or 15. Not in developed countries. So your minimum should be, you should expect to pay for a professional, legitimate ghostwriter's $25,000. Most publishers and literary agents, if they're going to bring a ghostwriter into the project, they're going to expect to pay somewhere between 45 and 60. That's kind of a good trade-off between having a professional without breaking the bank. Your more experienced ghostwriters are going to charge probably more like 70 or 80. So the kind of the grizzled veterans of the industry, as I like to think of them, are going to charge close to 6 figures. And then above 6 figures, you kind of have your star-studded cast, the illustrious few who have charged mega bucks. And the record that we know of, and this is in an industry that is built on anonymity. So the true figure may be somewhat higher, but what we have on record is General Norm Schwarzkopf. It was one of the kind of the heroes of the Gulf War, and his ghostwriter's fee was $500,000.
Very good. Thank you for sharing that. Let's move now, because I want to give you time at the end to close out and give links to all of your things. Let's talk about success and happiness. And before we get to that piece, because that's coming, you said in the pre-chat with me that you believe everyone should write a book. Tell me about that.
So, Carolyn, it's like, in a sense, it's kind of like the idea of everyone needs to keep a journal. The act of writing forces you to clarify, ideas that are just kind of drifting around in your head. And writing a book makes you get even more detailed about exactly what you're thinking and why you're thinking it. And the act of actually writing those down, it takes it from being just a concept that's just flitting around in your mind, something that doesn't really exist, like those kids with paint. It's not real on the screen. Once you write it down, there's power in you making it real. So forcing yourself to actually write down something that makes sense, to state to the world, this is what I think, these are my beliefs, this is my perspective. It's incredibly powerful. So for me,
yeah, definitely, very, very powerful there, Derek. With the let's see where I want to go next with you, because we're going to close this out timely. You talked in the pre-chat also about taking some of your writers to literary agents, and just the short story is that's a service that you offer to some of them under certain conditions, correct? You hook them up with major literary agents to major publishing houses, correct?
Right.
And that's part of the fee. That's part of what you do. Where can people find you, and how can you help?
Everything is through DerekLewis.com. I love connecting with people on LinkedIn, on Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest, but mostly LinkedIn is the professional platform.
You and I just connected on there today. Thank you for accepting my request. Thank you for being on the show. And I've also loved your website. You've got a lot of good stuff going there. Go to Derek, and I'm going to leave again the link to your website on boomtank.com for this episode. They'll find that there. Closing thoughts on success and happiness. You and I talked again in the pre-chat about this. How do you define success right now? Do you feel successful right now on your own terms? And how's your happiness?
Success for me, Carolyn, is about being able to live my life on my own terms. And that might sound selfish, but it's incredibly empowering to achieve that. So for the fact that I make a steady, stable, six-figure income, I'm able to provide for my family. I enjoy going to work. It's not a chore for me. My business is not something that I begrudge or something that I hate. It's a source of joy for me. So to be able to do something that brings me joy, to be able to feel like I do play a small part in making the world a better place, and in having a source of income that allows me the freedom to do some wonderful things with my friends and family. That's success in my book. And yeah, I'm successful.
You're very successful. And I'm going to give you so much credit for following your heart. Your passion was writing. Your passion was business books. You put them together. I mean, now in hindsight, it seems like so simple and easy, doesn't it? It was like, what were you thinking all those years? It's so easy. In hindsight, it's always such simple math, but when we're going through it, it's calculus, baby. It's all these, incredible formulas, and where's it all going to end? And at the end, it's like, you mean it was really just 1 + 1 = 2? Really? And I salute you for that. I salute you because the answer was the simple math in your heart, and that was your purpose. And you're doing great work on the planet because you're not only bringing business principles to the planet, you're now helping these business leaders and these leaders in general bring their social platforms to the planet so they can have that social impact and great social change. So you're a hero, literary hero. It's really fantastic. How's your happiness on that end? What do you have to say about happiness? And then we're going to close it out.
Happiness for me, Carolyn, is being grateful, counting my blessings every day. That's happiness for me. And so as long as I have something to count and something to be grateful for, I can be happy.
Derek Lewis, LEWIS.com. Please go visit his site. If you're interested in taking this on as a profession, he's your guy. If you are interested in writing a top professional business book for a calling card for impact on the planet, he is your ace. And you have worked with some very, very powerful people, and you've done amazing things on this planet. You're still rolling, you're still growing, and you're still expanding your reach. And I feel very blessed to have had you on the show today. It's quite an honor. So thank you for honoring me, the listeners, and the watchers for coming on Winning in Business Live. Really appreciate it, Derek.
My pleasure, Carolyn.
All right, everyone. We'll see you. If you love this, please share. Please share. Please like my business page, facebook.com/The Boom Tank. I've got some other great things coming up soon, some YouTube things, and then my debut third live stream show for the summer, the new one. The first one ran for 8 weeks over there. And now the next one for 8 weeks runs. That comes online Thursday. Now, I'm going to tell you about that, too. It's kind of fun. So we will see you there. You have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much for tuning in. And if you're tuning in on the replay, really appreciate you watching the replay. Have a good one, everyone. Take care. Bye.